Welcome, Sarah. It's such a delight to have you here. I loved your book.
Oh,
I can't wait
thank
to talk
you.
more.
Thank
Honestly,
you.
really did. It was so powerful, and I felt your heart, your energy, your wisdom, all the experience that you've moved through since the creation, especially of your podcast. But before we dive into all of your beautiful sharings and wisdom and stories, can you please take us back to when you were a producer and you described in the book of being in constant survival mode? And I know
Yes.
a lot of people and a lot of
Yeah,
us, even if you're in an aligned job, can feel like you're in constant fight or flight. Your body will be. So can you speak to that, please?
absolutely. I feel like, and it doesn't happen with everyone, but for a lot of us to grow, we go through these, what they call a dark night of the soul, right? And, why you and I do this work is that we hope that people don't need to reach that point so that they can just be able to expand without it. But that wasn't the case for me. And so I was a producer for many years and I got this job. I landed a job as a breakfast radio producer. And I thought all my Christmases had come at once because that was the creme de la creme of radio shows, the breakfast show. And it was a kind of a different format. We were running for the first time the Sydney show from Melbourne because the talent were in Melbourne. And so logistically, it was a little bit challenging because also half the team were in Sydney because that's where the market was that we were broadcasting into. So I'm really excited about this. I've always wanted to produce a big show. Great. The bad side of this was the fact that I had done no inner work on myself. So
Mm,
my life had been trying to climb the corporate ladder to get to a certain point, and I had, in my mind, thought I had got there. And I was getting paid a salary at the time that I had never even dreamt of. Wow, that's so great. I was working with huge talent. I was going to amazing parties and like ticking the boxes of all the external things that people would think that they wanted in their life. But as I said, there was no internal work done on myself. So I started this role in breakfast radio and I was working 5 days a week. And you have to wake up early. Obviously, it's the breakfast show and you're a producer, which means you have to wake up extra early. So I was waking up at 3 a.m. I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old at the time. In the midst of Melbourne winter, it's freezing, your car's frosted over. Day by day, I'm working these long hours. And with a producer in a role like that, you don't turn off. You literally have to work what seems like 24 hours. It can't be like, okay, I've logged off for the day. If news breaks, if sport breaks, if entertainment breaks, you have to be on. So I'd be, maybe finishing up at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon and then getting my kids from creche and kinder and then getting messages on my phone about things. It wasn't like I just leave and it's all finished. So then there's an adrenaline that runs in you. It's the fight or flight. And what we know is that's okay if you're running away from something or there is a threat. That's not okay if it's 7 days a week. And that's the survival mode that I was living in. And when things like that happen, you start to crumble. And I started to crumble, but it was very gradual. It wasn't like just one thing happened and then it all, turned upside down. It was like death by 1,000 cuts, where I started to feel a little bit more down and a little bit more down. And I was so sleep deprived because I was waking up so early every morning. And then I was going to sleep the same time my kids were going to sleep. And then you can't fall asleep because you have to wake up early. It was just one thing after the next. And I became more and more miserable, more and more run down. I wasn't taking care of my health. And then the turning point for me was I was very sick with the flu one day and I couldn't come into work. Like I literally tried and I nearly fainted. I went back to sleep. And then when I eventually woke up, I made my way to the kitchen. And as I was going there and, made myself a tea and then went to the sofa, I sat there and I remember thinking, how has life become so empty? How am I this sad? I don't know how my dream job turned into this. And what do I do to get out of it? And I started crying and crying. And within that dark night of the soul, it was like it's like I heard this internal whisper. And I don't know exactly where it came from, which was you need to help yourself,
mm,
right? you need to do something for yourself. And I had always been into personal development work in the sense of understanding it. And I studied the Kabbalah when I was young, and I loved the spiritual side of things. I had played around with it, but I hadn't really immersed myself in it. And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm really going to try and understand the mind-body connection. I want to understand about why some people are happier than others. I really want to understand about mindset and thoughts. And I literally dived into every personal development book under the sun. But the difference is, and this is a critical part of my expansion, I wasn't just reading the books or listening to the podcasts. I was absolutely living and breathing and embodying everything I was learning. And that was the difference. Because you can listen to things, you can understand them. Someone can listen to our conversation today and go, I get it. I'm in the same situation as what she was in, but then make no change in their life. And as we know, for change to occur, you need to change. So I really made sure I made those changes on myself. And I really started watching every thought that went into my mind. I started changing the way that I was talking to people and internally. And those little changes, which I made sure I was doing every single day, started to make my world upheaval. So there was this huge upheaval. And I initially was like, oh my God, what's going on? I'm doing all this personal development work and I feel like my life is just like whirlwind changing. And after really a couple of weeks, I got the pat on the back that my role was being made redundant. And, you know, can I move to Sydney? I was like, I'm not moving to Sydney. And they were like, well, you don't have a role then. And I remember thinking, I've done all this work on myself. Like, how is that possible? And then again, a week later, the big bosses of the radio network called me and said, we have a role in podcasting. Would you be interested in moving into that? And I ended up moving into that. I was the producer at the time for the biggest podcast in Australia. And 3 months into producing that, being so happy and keep doing the inner work on myself, I thought, why? This transformation of mine has been so big and in such a short period of time, I must teach people what I'm learning. And I came up with the idea of my podcast, A Life of Greatness. And 6.5 years later, you know, we sit here and I've interviewed the biggest names in the world and it's been life-changing. It changed the trajectory of my life.
And you feel the certainty in your energy and in what you've created from that place. And what I'm just hearing from you as well is that you gave yourself the chance to live in a different way. And for a lot of us, it's going to feel uncomfortable. I think sometimes we can, you know, even speaking about the mind-body connection, your body is going to be uncomfortable. Your mind is going to be uncomfortable with change.
100%.
Your nervous system has been attuned to, yes, we can be aware that they're limiting, but your nervous system is safe in what's limiting. And so just to highlight in what you've just shared is that you gave it a chance, you gave an opportunity for something different, but you also leaned into the discomfort. And I'm sure it would have been so uncomfortable for you, or maybe not, but there would have been that trust and that faith in that week that you were like, okay, well, am I not going to have a job? And then sitting and holding true to that in a week, because you could have been like, oh, well, I should go to Sydney then. I've worked so hard. We can move everything. And you were like, no, you know, I'm going to stay. I can't go back now on what I've been practicing. And then you get the opportunity to become a podcast producer.
It's a very good point, and one that I really want to highlight because it doesn't stop in life. And I've had it recently where there was a bit of a shake-up and I thought, oh, wow, this is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know, change is uncomfortable, right? Because we're creatures of habit. We always like knowing what we're doing the next day and it can be comfortable, but, you know, no growth comes from a comfort zone, right? And I remembered faith, hope, they're all the same family. And really, I thought to myself, which I have thought to myself recently as well, I have worked too hard in my life to not know that those doors are not going to open for me and that I'm not being guided in the right way. I have the faith that I can't see it now and that it seems really cloudy and scary, but on the other side is something that is much better for me, right? And I had never had that before. And from my studies and teachings, I had learnt that. And sometimes that's all we have. You
Especially at
know,
the start.
really, it's all we have. But if we hold on to that, I can tell you that as, there's a famous quote, if you're walking through hell, keep walking. And it's true. Just keep walking. You'll get to the other side. So it's been my experience that if you just keep marching on, you'll get there. You'll get there, but you have to have faith.
Yeah. I love the quote as well. The treasure you seek is in the cave you don't want to enter.
No,
Know,
beautiful.
yeah. And how I see it now as well is that if you have this intuitive feeling or this connection or this pull, and as well there's mental resistance, that's the best sign. That's actually going to be your expansion and your growth. Because if there's no mental resistance, I would argue it's like still on the same level, or it's in the same, if we kind of think of it in that way. And so instead of believing the fear or just seeing the fear as truth, and I really felt this with you when you rode around the Wim Hof retreat you went on, and you really were just like, okay, well, if I have a fear, I need to move towards it rather than, and Michael Singer actually writes about this as well, about how a lot of humans, we can have this thorn within us. And if we move around life protecting the thorn, protecting the fear, and we can micromanage, for you, it was like, I will just never be cold then. I will just go through life never being cold, and I will make sure that every environment is always at the temperature that I prefer and I desire. But until you actually reach to the thorn and able to transform the thorn and no longer be afraid of it, then you're actually free.
100%.
So can you speak to that about, you moving towards fear, basically? Yeah.
I've got a really great example of this, which I was thinking about the other day. I went, and I'm a keynote speaker, right, on mindset. And in the last year, because the book's come out, I've done a lot of keynotes, thousands of people in a room, and I get up there and it's like I hold the space and I love it. A few years back, I found that terrifying. And I can tell you 99% of people we know find that terrifying. Jerry Seinfeld has a beautiful quote. He says, the person getting up at a funeral would rather be the person in the casket dead than saying the speech. And it's so
true.
true.
It's the highest ranking fear above death.
Yeah. Which is crazy, right? So I had done this keynote speech at this retreat, and it, went really well and all this stuff. And it was quite a long drive home, so I had a lot of time to think and reflect. And I had been to the same retreat, I think it was like 5 or 6 years earlier. And I'll never forget when I got in there. I was still kind of a newbie to the space, and my hand was shaking, and I was holding a piece of paper and reading it off the paper because I, at that stage, hadn't memorized it, and I was very new.
Was at.
Exactly. And I remember I was absolutely so terrified. And I remember thinking, I've got to put the paper on the podium because my hand is shaking so much that it's actually embarrassing that it's like, they can tell. And then I was driving back thinking, oh my God, look at how much you've expanded and changed. But if I had stopped at that one talk where I was terrified, and honestly, I don't think I did such a great job, those years back. It was okay, but it wasn't fantastic. Then I would never have gotten to where I am now. And I teach that to my kids as well. No one starts something and is amazing at it. They don't. Any sport you play, you don't pick up a basketball and are amazing at it. It takes practice. You look at the biggest names in the world, at any athlete, anything in any profession. They just work at it and they work at it and they work at it. And everything is scary when you first started. But if you have the passion and you want to light up whatever it is that you're doing, for me, it was public speaking. I wanted to share my messages. I just needed to keep getting out there, as frightening as it was when I first started. And I needed to keep doing it. And the more I did it, the easier it became. And that's what every fear is like. So you mentioned the Wim Hof retreat. Yeah. And as you said, I hate the cold. And it's easy to try and hide from the cold by wearing warm jumpers and turning the heating up in your car and your home and your workplace and whatever it is. And when I had interviewed Wim Hof on my podcast, and my girlfriend listened to it, and she's like, there's a retreat in the next few weeks. Come with me. And, my initial reaction was, of course, I'm not going to come with you to that. And then my husband was like, why wouldn't you go to that? Are you serious? That's a great opportunity. And the more I thought about it, I was like, okay, why not? Yeah. I've got to live. One thing was, when I started the podcast, I wanted to be as authentic as possible, and I wanted to live and breathe everything I was talking about. And I talk so much about authenticity. I was like, I need to do this. So I went. It was so cold. We did it in May or something in Victoria, not even in Melbourne. So like the coldest of the cold. And we're waiting to get into the ice bath. And I'm in a bikini. Why I was in a bikini, who knows? I think I didn't have a one piece at the time, because I was definitely not
You weren't
entering any
thinking
ice
about it.
baths. I was just like sunbaking on hot beaches.
Yeah, you were avoiding the thoughts. Yes.
Exactly. I didn't do competitive swimming. So I'm in this bikini waiting for my turn. Already I was shaking nonstop. And because like you, I'm little, I was like thinking everyone else seems like a lot bigger than me. They're able to take the cold a lot better than me. Through my mind, I'm thinking maybe I could have a heart attack. Like realistically, these were my thoughts.
That's what fear does. It gets bigger and bigger.
And so I'm shaking because I'm really actually cold because we're standing and it's actually raining. And I think it was at the time like 4 or 5 degrees before even hitting the ice bath. And I'm thinking, how am I going to get into that ice bath when I am so cold already? And as, the universe does, these strangers that were around me, my friend went and she finished and we clapped for her because she was amazing. And then she'd gotten into the hot tub. And these strangers around me could tell that I was nervous. I actually don't know how they could tell. I must have been oozing nerves, right? Because I wasn't saying like I'm nervous. I was all internalizing it, but exactly energy. And
they would have just felt drawn to connect with you as well.
Yeah, and I must have looked petrified. And they were so sweet. And one guy in particular, just your average looking guy, said, look, my wife has brought me here. I have never been into an ice bath either. Why don't, because there were a few set up at one time. We were going in like groups. Why don't you come in at the same time that I go in? And it just, the kindness of strangers, honestly, he said that it made me feel so much better. And then I remember there were other guys around me and they were like, we'll take your stuff, so holding my phone and stuff like that. We'll take everything for you. Do you want us to take some pictures? I was like, wow, these are like complete strangers being so kind. And as soon as I went into that ice bath, I mean, yes, it was absolutely freezing, but something just hit home in me. And I think it was also the years of meditation that I'd done, where I made myself go into this meditative space. We'd obviously learnt the breath work, in the day leading up to that at the retreat of what to do. But I went into this space where I just allowed my breath to be able to control my nervous system. I took my mind into a different place and I did it. And the feeling of being able to conquer that ice bath for someone who had spent their whole life being so cold and so scared of the cold was unbelievable. It honestly made me feel like I could do anything. And then also like just reflecting again on the kindness of those people around me. I did not know those people and they were so sweet and they didn't need to do that for me, but they did. And that helped me conquer my fear as well. It's just been completely life-changing. And I think anyone that's scared of doing anything, if you really do want to do it, just try and move past that fear, because I can tell you the other side is honestly glorious.
And then you see who you truly are on the other side of it. I feel like if we're motivated by fear or almost look for it, I feel I have had similar experiences where public speaking or anything just within business or in life, and at one point it being so petrifying and being like, good, I actually need to move towards that.
Yes.
And then looking for that, because it can very easily and very quickly become normal. I remember the first time I ran a retreat, that was such an initiation. And now I'm like, okay, well, I don't want retreats to just keep feeling of like, oh yeah, I just do a retreat.
Yeah.
And like, how do you continue to not push the limits, but expand the limits of yourself and see who you are in that? But what was really a beautiful thrill line within your book was your teachers and the people that came into your life. And when I say teachers, they could just be someone that you met at a coffee shop.
Yeah.
And what was so obvious to me was the presence you have in life that, you would say it very quickly of, oh, and then we just chatted for an hour outside the coffee shop. And I just wanted to take that out of the book to remind people that life will present you the people exactly when you need. But how much do we like head down on our phone, not present or not available to the little nudges or the little signs or the people that come into your life? And what has been the power of being open to receive, the invitations of life and knowledge that's wanting to come to you? And just the fact that you would be like, okay, this is what I must receive in this moment because it's in my present awareness.
I think the idea of being consciously aware of what's around you and understanding signs when they're given to you, and sometimes you think they're a sign, they're not a sign.
Yeah.
And, that happens where you're like, oh, this is going to potentially, lead me in the right direction, and it doesn't. But there might be even a bit of information that you learned that takes you into another direction, or you just acknowledge it and it's just growth for you. And for me, it happened to me actually yesterday. In my old life, I was a podcast producer for true crime. I don't write about that in my book, but it was like a genre that I produced for 4 years, and it was very interesting. And I had done a video about it recently, but it was from the other side of what you and I sit in, which is you should be very careful about the news and about the sort of media that you're consuming,
absorbing.
true crime being one of them, because it goes into your psyche. So I've got a Friday episode called Sarah's Thoughts where I talk about different subject matters as a mindset coach, which I am, and that was one of them. And someone saw that from a big university in Melbourne and said, we'd love you to come sit on a panel for our journalists, and it's about true crime. And I rocked up yesterday and I'm thinking, I don't really think I know so much about true crime anymore. I actually talk about the complete opposite of true crime, but then it ended up being great. It was a wonderful
perfectly
panel.
meant to be.
But I meet this girl, and as soon as she meets me, she had started reading my book, and she's an amazing crime writer. She has had novels that have turned into like full-length feature films, and just this girl is epic. And she came over to me, she said, oh my God, I'm reading your book and all this stuff. Then she starts telling me all these ideas. You know what? I reckon what your next book should be around. And I'm like, haven't even thought about writing a next book. Like I just did my first one in March, got released. And she's so smart, this girl. And she's like telling me all this stuff and great ideas. And we sit on the panel together with someone else and we get along like a house on fire, and we swap numbers. And she's like, I'd really like to go for that coffee because I have so many ideas for you. And I just thought, to your point, I'm on a panel talking about true crime.
Yeah.
The complete opposite of my genre, but something I've obviously had experience in. And the universe is bringing me this gorgeous girl who actually has these amazing ideas about book 2.
Yeah.
And there were things like that happen the whole time, but I could have closed off to that and thinking like, oh, what would you know? You like talk about true crime and I'm in personal development. But I don't. I think, wow, this is interesting. And I will definitely go out with her. She's a gorgeous person, but also she had wonderful ideas. And we see glimpses of that the whole time in life, right? We just need to really keep our eyes open to know when it's there and move with it and not close down things so fast.
And trust your body's response with things. So you were obviously like, oh, I'm intrigued here. I'm expanded. That's your yes. Let's explore more. And what happens is our logical mind needs to know what we're going to get from it. So you get the email about the true crime panel and it's, oh, I feel interested to go to this. I feel called to go here. But the logical mind can be like, oh, it's because, there has to have a reason why. And it's no, it was actually to meet that person.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're never going to know.
Yeah.
We have to actually just trust. And that's with everything. I could feel that as well in your stories. It was like you wouldn't have been able to guess what you were going to receive until you're actually there and in it and in the arena and being able to experience it.
It's interesting, it happens the whole time. When you really work on yourself, and you would have the synchronicities just popped up left and center. And even I remember I had written the book and was starting to do a lot of events, a lot of keynotes, and I did something in Byron, and I was like walking through the airport security to get a flight back to Melbourne. And this guy behind me is like, Sarah, someone I had met 3 years ago was like, you were just in Byron doing an event. And I said, yeah, because we're at Gold Coast Airport or something. Oh, my wife went to see you. She said you're amazing. I have these opportunities. Oh, my God, we should do something together. And he was like talking of all this stuff, which is amazing. But he wouldn't have reached out to me unless he was walking behind me just in security at the airport. And things like that happen the whole time. It's incredible. Like you want to pinch yourself.
Yeah.
Thinking, wow, things are being orchestrated for my benefit. And the things that seem quite bad are also orchestrated for my benefit. Like I think about the ending of that radio role. I was devastated, even though I didn't like the job, because I thought, oh my God, I might not have a job. But then again, it moved me into the right direction. And I'm a true believer that if you don't hear the signs or see them, then the universe is going to kind of take it away in a way that's not so comfortable for you, which was what happened with me.
Harder and harder to ignore.
Exactly. And then you're kind of a little bit in a situation where you think, oh, Lord, this is very uncomfortable. If you can kind of move in before that and listen, I didn't like that job. I should have probably have left myself. All I did is complain about it, but I didn't because I was scared. And so then it completely took it away from me. So I had no choice. But then it changed the trajectory of my life.
And you're never going to know. And I think it comes down to remembering that we all have some form of an evolutionary journey here. And when you can kind of see that, as you said, everything is for your benefit, even if you can't see it just yet. And then how you respond is going to be very different, because responding by victim, everything's going to go wrong. I need to control everything now. I'm separate or missing out, to like, okay, this is unfolding, even if it's super hard and challenging right now. You can have your whole process and be emotional, all the things we all do and need to do, but also coming from, okay, like how do I move from a more, I was going to say an expansive space, but more of a, like an evolutionary space of what can I create from here now? And then you're truly actually like in that co-creation rather than in the
push-pull.
Yeah. And like when we try and control life, it's like, good luck.
Yeah, I
Good
know.
luck.
And we've
You're
all
gonna be
been there
sick.
trying to control it. I mean,
know.
that's human nature, right?
Exactly. That's fear. Yeah.
But
it's just like-
sometimes, it's such an interesting dance. And I think I've done about 30 episodes on my podcast about this. The surrender,
yeah.
but you can't surrender completely either.
No.
Like I couldn't just sit there thinking, I'll just let the podcast run itself and I'm sure the big guest will just knock on the door. Of course not.
No.
When we want to create, we need to put out.
Yeah.
But sometimes, and I'm sure you've been in this situation too, we're just putting out and very attached to the outcome. We think we know the outcome. And when we think we know the outcome and we push so much for it, we're blocking an even better outcome. And I have done that on so many occasions. So I try and I do put out and I work, I do work hard.
Yeah.
But then I also let go of expectations, and that has been very hard for me to do and has taken a lot of work. And even now still, I feel there are some times where I'm like wanting a certain outcome. But then I have this saying in my head always, let go and let God.
Yeah.
Let go and let God.
Beautiful. And how I see surrender is not surrender to not doing nothing. It's surrender to your gut, or surrender to where you feel called, or surrender to your knowing, as you spoke about in your book. Rather than surrender just means passive. I don't see it as
or
passive.
give up. I give up. Yeah.
Because that's actually your mind telling you to just give up. And it's in seeing that there's going to be some form of, I guess, challenge that you have to get to deepen that connection with that as well. So can you please speak about your knowing?
Yes.
And the importance of being connected with your knowing, and even as well how you've taught it with your kids. I felt that was really beautiful, of how you have helped them to connect. They would have also as well known, but to have language around that.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel, a knowing is a heart thing. It's a gut thing. It's when you know something is right, and then when you know something is not right. And again, going back to that, what we were talking about, having faith that even if you might not be able to see it, knowing that it is there. And, I think we get it with people the whole time. You meet someone, you warm to them. You don't really know why you warm to them, but you just do. There's an instant connection. Like going back again to that lady on the true crime panel. I just met her and I really liked her. I spent an hour with her, but I really like this woman. And I will often have that in life, but then I actually have the opposite too, where I meet someone and they do not do anything negative, and I think there's a knowing within me where I just don't feel like maybe you're my person. But you're just not sure what it is. And it's being able to really trust that. And I think a lot of that comes with using meditation as well. Meditation, obviously, we hear so much about it. You're a Vedic meditation lover. I am myself, as well as a lot of other meditations. And getting into that quiet space, right? Because our mind is go the whole time. And when we find ourselves in that space and we're able to quieten the mind through moving into a mantra of some sort, or it might be a guided meditation or watching your breath, whatever you like, they're all fantastic, honestly. It allows you to be able to feel that inner knowing even more, right? Because you're going into your subconscious mind rather than the conscious mind, which we have in day-to-day life that is so active. It's guiding us, but sometimes we can find it confusing because we're just trying to get through the day with the normal things. So when we're trying to get a read on something, we don't know because it's just everything is so active around us. But when we go into that quiet space of meditation, it's when you can feel, and that's where you get a good feel of what the right step is, what the next step should be. So for anyone listening who might have a situation or they're confused about something, I would highly suggest trying meditation out or going into that meditative quiet space where you can quieten the mind and really think about what it is that you want and how to move forward from there. And the more you do it, the more the answers will come. I always say when we pray, we're talking to God. And when we meditate, God is talking to us. And I got a beautiful example of this. A couple of years ago, it could have actually been last year now, the years blend into one another.
That's when you're living in alignment.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
not
I
counting down
can't keep
time.
up.
Yeah.
Andrew Huberman, who obviously has a
Yeah.
huge podcast, he was here doing a tour. And, you know, we tried the normal channels to get onto him and he wasn't doing any interviews. And I thought, sometimes that's not always the way. It's just the normal channels. They're not able to get interviews or whatever. You
He's
know,
not
as a
checking
podcaster.
his Instagram.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I had kind of thought about it at length. Okay, how do I get to him? And then I went into meditation and I did this long meditation. I wasn't thinking about him at all. And then after the meditation, there was a breath work element too. And I lay there just beautifully serene. And it was like, bang, the thought came, what about this person that you know that knows him? And I thought, oh, God. And you know when you get those thoughts when you're in meditation that they're an absolute sign.
Yes.
Within 3 days, I was on an email with Andrew Huberman saying, I'd love to come on your podcast.
Yeah.
You just can't make this
You
stuff
can't
up.
make it up. It doesn't make logical sense. I always think let it not make logical sense,
Yeah.
that, you know, you can just be quiet for a moment and the idea comes through, and to give yourself that space. And when you're connecting to that energy, it's connecting to divine intelligence, to love.
100%.
And you do. And then that's when you can trust it. And that's the real sign. That is the real sign. Create space with
Absolutely.
yourself and what comes through.
Yeah. And I mean, people think, oh, meditation. I mean, you'd get this, I get this the whole time. I can't do it.
It's not
It's
about
so
that.
hard. No one can do it when
No
they
one
first
can
do
do
it.
it.
And I always say that on the podcast. No one is good at meditation when they first started.
Yeah.
Everyone has a monkey mind. I had a monkey mind.
Yeah.
I gave up meditation for months. I tried it when I was in the radio role, and I just thought, my mind is so active. It's just not for me.
Yeah.
And I hadn't found the meditation that suited me. I just got recommended some that in hindsight weren't that great. And then the more I thought about it, the more I was recommended meditations, some guided ones, and they were excellent. And then I started to love it. The rest is history. You know, nearly every single day, that is part of my practice.
Absolutely.
And a very important part of my practice. And I love it. I don't do it because I think I should. I do it because I love it. And I think that once you start with meditation, you see the results, you're craving going into that
You
quiet
salivate for
space.
it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the best part of your day, honestly. So I highly recommend it to everyone. It is by far one of the biggest factors in changing my life is meditation.
Absolutely. And even just in line with life of greatness, I feel all great people, in quotation points, but all people that are doing incredible things in the world and really in their power, all meditate.
All meditate.
All meditate.
Yeah.
All
Do
meditate.
some form of meditation
Exactly.
because you have to be able to quiet the mind.
Exactly. And just the training in that, because then what I found was that the fear didn't take hold as much. Also, as well, I found a connection more of like love. And I really wanted to speak about your story when you went on the retreat and that connection to that inner love, because it is an internal felt experience. We can think that another person gives us love. No, you feel the love in your body. It's a self-creation feeling, and that's who we are. And I really found it with meditation was because I've had such a big journey around that of so much self-hatred, so much ridicule, so much shame and judgment, which most of us have, unfortunately, or we've had an experience with that. And just like in the quietness of self-acceptance that you have when you're just with yourself, I found, and then from acceptance and understanding of self was like you could actually just feel love. I mean, not need to have a reason for feeling love. It was just that you are that energy. So I would love for you to please share about that moment when you were on the retreat and, you know, that sensation.
Yes.
And yeah, anything you have to share around
I
that.
do believe our innate nature is love.
Yeah.
But we lose that because of what we're faced with every day, like the noise of the world. And then we can really move so far from it that we find it so hard to connect with it. But honestly, it's the thing that draws us all together, right? Is love. And really, love has been a big part of my teachings and study for a long period of time because of how beautiful it is. And without love, what do we have? Really, what do we have? I really believe it's the strongest force. And so I went to this, as I write in my book, I went to this retreat. Part of the retreat is that a lot of people come there because they're unwell. Some people are dying. You don't know the ins and outs of their health problems. And in a few days into the retreat, we do this healing on them. And there would be 100 or 200, I don't even know the number. It was a lot of people that put their hand up that I would like a healing. You know, they set the room up, these people lie down, and it's almost like a Reiki kind of thing that you do. And you get taught by the teacher how to do this. There's no touching the person or anything like that. And they just put you in random kind of groups so you don't know the people that you're with. And there was like a beautiful woman lying in front of me. And I had been on this retreat a couple of times, so I knew how it worked. But before I went in that day to do the healing, I had gotten some news about a friend and I just felt so bad for her. And I felt a lot of sorrow and I had such a broken heart for my friend and what she was going through that I felt like I had nothing to give, right? So I get into this and I'm thinking, oh my God, I just heard this news and I just don't feel like my happy, vibrant self. And I'm supposed to put my hands out and give love to someone. I don't feel like I have any love. I feel quite empty. And there was part of me that felt bad. Oh, this poor girl gets lumped with me. And I have like feeling I can't give any love right now. Oh, well, I'll try my best. We're circled around her. You close your eyes. You're guided into what to do. And I'm closing my eyes and I'm giving love to this person. And part of me is thinking, "Oh, I don't know if anything's even coming out of my hands right now. I feel so empty." And our eyes are closed, but I kind of could hear noises and I peeked around the room a little bit. And when I was doing that, it was the most beautiful room of people I've ever seen. There were people who were in their 70s to teenagers, and they all had their hands up, giving love to complete strangers. They're looking at these people. They have tears streaming down their eyes. I look at this one woman, I'll never forget it because it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And I could see that she was like mumbling a prayer. She was moving her lips and she was praying. I looked at this teenage boy giving love to someone that was the age of his mother with tears streaming down his eyes. And I thought, humans are good.
Yeah.
They really are. I'm looking at this room of hundreds of people and they are all connected in giving love to strangers they have never met. And I'll never forget that. And I was doing it obviously with my hands. And then the instructor said, you turn now the love back to yourself and you place your hands on your chest, on your heart. And the experience was so profound for me because as soon as I placed my hands on my heart, I felt this overwhelming sense of love that was so intense. My eyes were closed. And remember, I had thought that I couldn't give any love to this lady and I didn't feel like anything was coming out. Yet when I flipped my hands to my heart, I realized that the love that I needed was coming straight back to me.
Yeah.
And that it almost felt whatever I had given was just bang, being put back into my heart. And I closed my eyes. And then in that moment, I could see all my family members lined up. And it was so beautiful that it almost made me fall asleep because the love was so warm. It was like someone was holding me and cuddling me in this warm blanket that I had never felt like that before. It was unconditional love that very rarely in the human experience we get, because there are love that comes with conditions that a lot of us feel. I love you when you do this. I'll love you when you do that. But this was something I have never felt before, and honestly one of the best moments, in my life thus far, But the most powerful bit about that story was seeing the love that all those humans, all those strangers were giving to strangers that they didn't know. And I really think if we look at life through the lens of love,
Mm.
that is going to be what's reflected back to us. But we forget it.
Forget. And, energy always returns to the origin, and it's that looping and that receiving. And I think it's so important for us to always check what is our action coming from, because you can be doing all the right action, but if it's coming from fear or lack or scarcity, it's felt and that's what you receive. And I can so see this in your business, in your podcast, in your book. Yes, it's a business, but it's also such a labor of love. And then you receive from that. And then you get those synchronicities. You get the people that come into your life. All of a sudden, you get the idea to connect with Andrew Huberman because it is an expression of love that you have. And I think you shared the question in your book of like, how can I be of service? Or what was your question that you,
I mean,
yeah,
look, in my prayers every morning, I always say, use me for
yeah,
service,
yeah,
use me for the
beautiful.
highest good.
Yeah.
And just talking about that point in life, we do things we love, but there'll be struggle or we'll come up against things. It's natural. Just because you end up doing something that might be your purpose doesn't mean that it's, wow, the road is straight and there you go.
No, definitely not.
And as you know, doing a podcast, it has its ups and downs, and sometimes more ups than downs. And I remember just recently, like feeling like it was a bit of a grind. I mean, I absolutely love doing it. There's no question about that. But there were a few things where it was like, wow, this is quite difficult. And then I had a guest on a few weeks ago, and it was just amazing. And I left, and this guy wasn't a big name or anything like that, but we had such a beautiful conversation. And I was driving home and I thought, this is why I do it, because I share, I engage with someone that I have never met. We talk about some of the most beautiful topics about the shared human experience that can be complicated. And then we put that out to people in the hope that their life has changed. That's what it's about. And sometimes we just need to kind of connect with that because we forget when things become hard. But if you're constantly following that, what is the reason I'm doing it? That's why. You come back home to yourself.
It's devotion. My word of the year at the start of the year became devotion. I had a Bali retreat at the end of last year and it was big for the women. It was big to hold. And afterwards, it was like, this is just pure devotion. And yeah, reminding yourself that, as you said, it's not going to always be easy, but at the same time, life is moving through you. Life is moving through you, and you're also being challenged in a way so more life can move through you. And yeah, I love that you're just normalizing that at the end of the day, looking back on your life, what is a life of greatness for you? And I actually want to ask you that. What does a life of greatness mean to you now after all these years?
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
life of service and love
Yeah.
and devotion to what you love. And with that devotion, obviously, kindness and things that help, as I said, other people. I always go back to it in the podcast, the Ram Dass quote, we're all here to walk each other home. And it's kind of a variation of that is the last line in my book about returning home. And I think returning home is helping one another return to love. And life is fleeting. And we know that, right? Things change in an instant for the bad sometimes. And when death is placed upon you, as in someone you know, or an illness for yourself or someone you know, everything changes. We don't want to get to that point where we're faced with that or have a loved one faced with that and think, why didn't I do this? Or why didn't I call them? Why didn't I follow my dreams? The Wayne Dyer quote, don't hide the music inside you. It's hard to find for some people what lights them up, but everyone has something. And sometimes it takes a while to kind of find what that is. And I always suggest to people, think about what you loved when you were young. Think about what you could do if money wasn't a question. You weren't just doing it because you needed to earn an income. And take little snippets of that and then move yourself in the right direction. You might not find the answer straight away. When I was at school, the podcast didn't even exist, right?
Same.
So I moved into different areas that lit me up, and some I did and they didn't light me up. And then you realize the ones that do, and then, okay, I wanted to do acting as from when I was young. I'm not an actress now, but how do I use the skills that I've learned? I'm a public speaker now, I'm a podcaster. These are all things that come hand in hand with what I love from a young age. And so it's just about trialing things and writing them down. And it takes time, but you'll get there. And
Mm.
so I think a life of greatness is that following what lights you up, have it serve others, and being the kindest version of yourself.
Yeah, they say that we come here to grow and to contribute. It's grow and contribute. And that's what most people, in some way, it doesn't have to be through a business, but in some way that you feel like you're of being of service because then you're feeling that love. It's like that giving of love is that receiving of love. And what just reminded me was actually, I thought about it yesterday. I was like, if you were alive right now, you have to have a purpose because you would perish, you would die if you didn't have a purpose. The Vedics will speak about this of, yeah, when people pass away, it's because they've done their life journey. They've had their life experience. They have reached their learnings that they needed to learn or done what they came here to do. And so if you're alive right now, you have something even deepening to connect within yourself and also with others. And again, it doesn't have to be a business. It doesn't have to be in your work. It could be in your friendships and your family or in your own self evolution. So it's just such a beautiful reminder that yes, you absolutely have something that lights you up, but you also have a very important role to play in this ecosystem here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everyone does. Everyone deserves to be here, and everyone
Yeah.
has an important role to play.
Yeah.
And no one is here just because.
Never. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank
I wish I could
you.
keep talking, and please share more about your book. Again, I really highly recommend your book. I loved it. Loved it. I read it and also listened to the audiobook. I highly recommend hearing Sarah speak. You can get it on Spotify. That's where I found it. But yes, and you have your podcast, so please share
I
all
have
of
my
those.
podcast,
Yes.
Life of Greatness, which is on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of those platforms. My book, Living a Life of Greatness, is available at good bookstores or online, or you can listen to it through Audible or Spotify.
And
Yeah,
mentorship.
and my website
Yes.
is sarahgrynberg.com. I do mindset coaching, keynote speaking, all those things.
Yeah, thank you so much for all you do in the world, honestly. I think it's important to have women like you speaking with such certainty because you can feel it and that energetic transmission, that certainty just like inspires and expands those who listen. So thank you for what
Thank
you do.
you for such a beautiful conversation today. I'm really grateful.